I just realized I get the goosebumps now because I have the honor and the pleasure to introduce Susann Cook Greuter. She really doesn't need introduction, I am quite sure. But I do want to honor her with the proper introduction. Susann is no stranger to this community. She is a true elder of the integral movement and a beloved voice who never fails to shake things up in the best possible way. Dr. Cook Greuter is the world's leading expert in mature ego development, and she brings depth, clarity, and just the right amount of mischief to every conversation. Let's give a warm welcome to the one and only Susann Cook Greuter.
So, do I speak now, or how does technology work?
Sorry?
Do I now speak, or is just
yes.
start?
No.
Yes.
No.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, Susann, everybody can hear you. We have you on the large screen, and please, over to you.
Oh, okay.
And
hello.
Also, Lily is here to help with your slides.
Yes, she mentioned that. I'm very grateful for all the help I can get with this. Okay, welcome, and thanks for being curious enough to attend. Let me start with some background and appreciation. I met both Ken Wilber and Don Beck in 2000 when Ken convened a group of founders to discuss the future of the Integral Institute. Ken had invited me on the strengths of my 1999 dissertation on ego development. What was important to him at that time seemed to be that ego development theory was a grounded theory based on thousands of pieces of data from 4,500 sentence completion tests, not just a theory begging for a measure. EDT, short for ego development theory, is based on studying the patterns underlying the types of stories people tell about who they are, what they believe, why they do what they do, and how they respond to ordinary life challenges. It also looks at the defenses people use and the level of self-awareness they express. Back in 1985, I proposed 2 stages to replace Löwinger's highest, her integral stage. I also added the growing perspective on the self. It serves to track the growth of mind and heart in a systematic way. The self perspective increases in a pattern of disidentifying with the mindset that came before and expanding the time horizon and the relationship bond to others with each new perspective. I was a newly, freshly minted PhD back in the early 2000s and still just observing the major voices in the integral scene. Now in my 80s, I dare sharing my long-standing concerns, and I'm fully expecting that I will ruffle some feathers. I'm deeply indebted to Ken for his huge philosophical opus and integration of vast areas of thought. I find AQUAL a fantastic heuristic to examine any field of inquiry. From the start, I have to admit, I was less taken by Don Beck's interpretation of Clare Graves' work, especially his use of colors. To deepen my understanding, I took several levels of Don's spiral dynamics teachings in the early 2000s. As someone familiar with color theory, I resisted the claim of warm and cool colors and the tight association of value memes with levels. I'm asking you today, to what degree theories that have been so widely shared and established can remain open to data that challenges their premises and allows for alternative interpretations. As I will argue, reigning theories such as integral and ST tend to become inflexible, and questioning them some may see as a kind of heresy. Lily, can you show slide 1? What's problematic with grand integral theories? In the next 40 minutes, I will cover a lot of different ideas at a fast pace. We will have a long Q&A tomorrow to digest further what I present. Here are the issues I will briefly address. The first is the problem of equating stages of cultural, social, and organizational development with individual development. Second, I find that the common representations of growth as spirals, linear sequences, and staircases do not reflect the complexity of human development. While they are the most common figures for growth, they are biased towards Western ideas of progress. Vertical theories project an upward and onward belief that higher is better. Third, the use of various color schemes creates ongoing confusion and difficulties in comparing different theories. Finally, I posit that the shift from first to second tier is not the only major watershed in meaning-making. Slide number 2, please. The problem of equating individual and social cultural development. Both Ken Wilber and Don Beck have based some of their claims on the notion that ontology recapitulates phylogeny, and that therefore individual development follows social cultural evolution. The original idea came out of biology and has since been challenged and debunked, as natural evolution is much more fluid, less predictable, and multidirectional. Adopting the idea for the social sciences without questioning its validity is therefore problematic. I believe that Ken and Don based their understanding of this topic primarily on the writings of Jean Gebser and Claire Graves, two luminaries of vertical and cyclical human development. To remind you, Jean Gebser lived from 1905 to 1973. He was a Swiss philosopher and linguist who described the evolving structures of human consciousness. He argued that consciousness is always in transition and has evolved so far through 5 epochs: archaic, magic, mythical, mental, and integral. His major work, Ursprung und Gegenwart, The Ever-Present Origin, was first published in 1949, then translated in 1991. Claire Graves lived from 1914 to 1986. He proposed the idea of the never-ending quest and of emergent cyclical levels of existence with concomitant values. His was a biopsychosocial system of growth. A wonderful biosocial, social, psychosocial. He published Levels of Existence, an open system theory of values, circa 1970 as a journal article, but his most important thought and data was not made public till after his death. Both authors depicted growth as an ongoing evolution where higher levels of development signal more maturity in both individuals and cultures. Next slide, please. Here is just a brief look at the table from Spiral Dynamics. It does not differentiate between individual and social cultural development. They are presented as one and the same. The next slide, number 4, uses the spiral as the quintessential representation of vertical development. This early representation of spiral dynamics combines great stage names with SD colors. The informative and subtler names used by Graves, however, have been left behind in much of SD teaching in favor of just using colors. By positioning later stages as increasingly ideal mindset or value memes, much of the complexity of being human is not giving enough room. Current proponents of spiral dynamics seem to have little awareness of this, claiming, for instance, that Don Beck brought the master code to the Rainbow Nation of South Africa reveals an unconscious Western bias. Just feel into the word master, given South Africa's painful history with apartheid. Next, slide 5. Associating SD levels with increasing positive values. In the several adult development theories that I have studied, later stages tend to be represent idealized, increasingly positive and pro-social behaviors and beliefs. Proponents of higher is better theories don't seem to recognize that all theories are constructed, more or less useful maps of reality, while they may quote Korzybski's that the map is not the territory. They seem to believe that their theories are an adequate reflection of reality, or I should even say representation. In addition, values-based theories do not seem to acknowledge that values come in pairs, which necessitate each other. Polar opposites, like light and dark, good and evil, or life and death, as well as polarities, activity and rest, introversion and extroversion, are part of the complex tapestry of concepts created in language. They belong to a human-centered, relative, and symbol-based framework. There's a lot one can say about just that. Slide 5. But more concerning is that the same value can be expressed at many levels. Let's say you are an animal lover and can't stand, you should show the next slide, please, Lily. Can't stand what is happening in laboratories. You can join an animal liberation front or react to your concern in many different stage-related ways. At RED, you may go out and forcefully liberate caged animals, regardless of the consequences for their survival chances and the labs that get destructed. At stage 3, blue, you may try to adopt such an animal to give it a better life than in the lab. At stage 3-4, you may research the sectors of medicine and pharma that do animal testing to weigh pros and cons and write reports. At stage 4, orange, you might also try to influence the laws governing animal testing based on research and broader cost analysis arguments to maximize benefits for humans and minimize harm to animals. At the post-conventional stages, green and higher, loving animals can take many forms. It is generally understood that different people and cultures have different attitudes to what constitutes the proper relationship between humans and the more than human world. As I showed briefly, all of the behaviors are based on someone's care about animals, though with vastly different outcomes. Next, we are dealing a bit with colors. Both Beck and Wilbur use simplistic colors. Spiral dynamics describes its stages as following each other in an unchangeable sequence of cool and warm colors. The choice was based on a grade school understanding of the primary colors on the color wheel. It's not based on scientific color theory, or better yet, on the natural color spectrum. To my regret, Wilbur messed up the color sequence even further by renaming some of the stages after he and Don separated. The colors in the final scheme have no relationship to actual frequencies in the visible color spectrum. Moreover, from my experience, the colors tend to invite folks to stereotype individuals and other cultures based on very little and superficial information. At the 2019 Integral African Conference, visitors from Europe were invited to take a trip and experience purple and red African tribes. That indigenous peoples, excuse me, that indigenous peoples have very sophisticated levels of knowledge of nature, non-ordinary realms, and profound wisdom is often completely ignored by those trained in Western frameworks. Indigenous theories of what it means to develop may not follow the strict, often cognitively based vertical growth sequences proposed in the West, but they exist and they are meaningful. Next slide, please. Look at slide 7. Cyan color theory explains that whether a color is warm or cool depends entirely on the context. As an artist or paint salesperson can tell you, every color family has both cool and warm expressions. The finer the color palette, the more colors can be defined by using subtle shade differences and color mixtures. You can clearly see a cool orange and a warm blue in this image. By insisting on the basic color sequence and associating each stage and personality characteristics, both at the individual and the systems level, color-based theories have become fixed. They can't be changed and could not readily accommodate new stages if there was additional evidence for doing so in the individual domain. Having highlighted some problems with naive color schemes and values-focused theories, I would now like to turn your attention to ego development theory and its use of the arc as an alternative explanatory representation. Please show slide 8. The colors of the arc are those of the rainbow, indicating increasing subtler frequencies. They do not relate to any specific stages. We use numbers and descriptive labels instead. In 1970, Jane Loewinger first formulated the basic sequence of ego levels as a linear progression, onward and upward. My research since the 1980s suggests that overall ego development is better represented as an arc. Ego awareness moves from the newborn's symbiotic and unconscious union with mother to a conscious union with all at the most mature levels of ego development. I define the ego as the relentless narrator and metabolizer of experience. It always tells a story that shows it in its best light to remain in charge all through the relative, language-mediated realm. Each stage in the sequence represents a different story about who I am and what the world is like. Thus, we can say that ego creates a better orientation map of reality at each new stage till it becomes aware of its own process of map-making. In the Loewinger tradition, EDT uses text analyses and syntactic evidence to mine large data sets for recurring patterns. The themes include, among many other criteria, how people conceive of time, whom they consider to be kin, and whom to take care of, and how aware they are of their inner life. The next slide, please. Number 9. Some of you may not be familiar with this theory. Thus, I will offer you the briefest summary of the overall trajectory in the next 2 slides. Overall, the theory chronicles the growth journey of adults. It describes a sequence of 8 distinct narratives of how adults experience life in ever greater breadth and depth of understanding. While there are resonances between individual and social cultural evolution, the two are by no means identical. Next slide, please. The first half of the arc represents pre-conventional and conventional ego development and captures stages 2 to 4. Development from birth to adulthood shows an overall trend of increasing differentiation towards an independent, well-defined, separate self-identity or self-authorship. Stage 4 is considered the adult self per se in Western-oriented society. It has the clearest boundary between me and not me, subject and object, interior and exterior. Based on over 11,000 sentence completion tests, we see that 80 to 85% of all members of modern society make sense within the stages of the first half of the arc. In the first half, the goal of development is to gain knowledge. That is, to look forward and backward in time, to do more and accomplish more, to gain independence and control, to notice, analyze, and describe more pieces, facts, and variables, to discover the patterns, rules, and laws of nature, to predict, measure, and explain how the world and people work. Now we can turn to the next slide, the second half of the growth arc that covers stages 4, 5 to 6. Only about 15 to 20% of individuals make sense of life from these 4 increasingly rare stages. After some people have reached full independent adulthood, they may enter a stepwise process of loosening and disidentifying with the separation and the sharp boundaries between me and not me, between inner and outer experience created in the first half of the journey. The hope is to gain discernment, wisdom, and compassion. That is, to understand self and others more fully and deeply, as we are all subject to the same human conditions, to recognize one's own assumption and biases, to perceive processes, interconnections, and mutual influence, to see oneself as a system within many nested and interdependent systems, to become aware of ego's need for explaining and storytelling, and to feel important, permanent, and in control. To see through ego's machinations and its capacity for self-delusion. And finally and eventually, to go beyond all illusions. The next slide, 12, the expanding perspective on the self. Along with revising Levin's integrated stage, I saw that the changing perspective on the self offers the structural underpinnings for the theory that was missing in her work and that Kohlberg constantly critiqued. It demonstrates the growing complexity of people's thinking, feeling, and judgment regarding action. The storytelling ego is the star in this depiction. The star represents the increasing altitude of the perspective the self can take. Perspective 3, 4, 5, respectively stages 2, 3, 3, 4, 4, 5, and 5, 6, show the ongoing differentiation from the prior stage to a new vantage point. With each new perspective from the first to the fifth, one can see more of what came before. The circles in the picture indicate the increasing capacity of the ego to see and interpret more of its experience. Stage 6, or the unitive stage, witnesses the process of human becoming and ego's efforts to be in charge. It has a post-symbolic understanding and encompasses any and all representations. This has been only the briefest sketch of what EDT entails. Let's now shift to the data that shows that individual development is not identical with social cultural evolution. Please, the next slide, Lily. This slide shows data from more than 11,000 maps I have analyzed since 1980. I would like you to look at this chart in pairs of two. Just turn to your seat neighbor and discuss for maybe 2 minutes 2 questions. What strikes you about these stats? And does it look like we are evolving overall? Then come back and share what you observed. Would somebody please time this exercise? Just 2 minutes. It takes very little to get a sense. And tell me when the 2 minutes are over.
Got it?
Please. Yep.
Tomorrow.
I see. So
So,
we will ask people to go online.
I have all the information.
If you need more time, you can tell me. I think I'm moving fast, so we have that time.
I can say something. He'll give me the. And Susann, I hope Susann will hear that. We'll see.
Is it working?
Hello. Okay, thank you. Please come back. 2 minutes
Thank
are
you.
over.
Anybody want to respond? What did you notice? Please just let me, I can see you now.
Center of gravity seems to be shifting.
The center of gravity seems to be shifting, was a comment.
Yes.
Okay.
It's collecting the numbers. The extreme less in time, and the center is accumulating more.
I'll give you the microphone later on. Okay? Yes, thank you.
Starting with stage 3, it looks like it's decreasing into our current ages, our current years, and up to 5, that also seems to be increasing. So though between 3 to 5, there seems to be the most shift. The ones on the extremes are not shifting that much.
Wait for the mic, otherwise she can't hear you.
Yeah, just someone else?
I was just commenting on the fact that we didn't see anything in the extreme there, or that seemed to move in the other way, that could be because the sample is so small that those numbers might not be statistically significant.
And also that we have changed since 2000 with all the energies and focus on integral. There are a lot more people who A, are familiar with developmental theories of all kinds, and B, who volunteer to take these tests. That was not the case before 2000. That was much more, in some ways, realistic. So that's more, I think, the reasons than statistical variations. So I trust the earlier ones in some ways more than I can. We just don't have the early anymore, and I don't get many very late stage ones. They just don't come. What I find is that people then parrot what they have learned about these later stages from other theories. It does no longer sound genuine, whereas the ones I started with were totally surprising. They came unexpected and had the ring of unique and embodied understanding. And then we always can say, you can fake it till you make it. If you can parrot these wonderful ideas, you may eventually actually learn from them or become more able to live in them. But that's becoming so difficult in these developmental theories to actually distinguish between embodied and just espoused. And what I was, of course, hoping you would notice is that there is actually convincing evidence that there is a stage between amber and orange. And that's what I think might be difficult for those who believe completely into the spiral dynamics and even Ken's sequence of stages, that there is something important missing. Because both theories have several pre-conventional and several post-conventional stages or transcendent stages, yet they only identify 2 in the conventional tier, where 75% of people or so make meaning. That made no rational sense to me from the beginning. The table includes even the most recent samples, which are less representative than the pre-2000 ones. In ego development theory, we define a stage as a mental model that individuals can hold for a lifetime. Stage 3-4 is not just a transitional stage between amber and orange. It is a separate stage by our definition. It is a very stable and resilient stage. Coaches and therapists find that stage 3-4 is one of the hardest to work with, and to help clients to recognize the social and organizational demand for having a more self-authoring stage 4 mindset. And overall, for my years of coaching and doing research, I have seen little growth in the population over the last 45 years. A shift to the right, maybe, but that's mostly because of the sample changes. While Wilber and Esty have promised that we will soon reach a tipping point towards a more enlightened citizenry, I don't see much evidence that people in modern society have evolved much over the last 45 years. And that just may be my critical nature.
Thank
The
you.
next slide, Peter. I would like to go on because we have such little time. The next slide, yes. This is a slide I'm sure you have encountered before, and as you can see, it is EDT is the only one that actually has a stage between amber and orange. And while Ken sort of acknowledged the increasing perspective on the cells in integral psychology, but I'm not sure that is still part of his arguments. I venture to suggest that the absence of a stage between amber and orange is the result of the unquestioned assumption that individual and social cultural development are the same. This belief is not the result of actual independent research about how individuals grow and make sense of their lives. And I just think it's important, particularly for those who in the helping professions, that we recognize when somebody is at that stage that is so resistant to being changed. Actually, the most resistant one, as far as I can have experienced. Now I'm going to make another leap in this talk, this time to artificial intelligence and what it reveals when applied to sentence completion data. The next slide, please. An AI analysis of 30,000 plus data points shows how ego stages seem to be clustered by stage and scattered along an arc shape. Thomas Madel, who is here and you can talk to, measured the maturity level of sentences using a sophisticated AI method called linear discriminant analysis. Tamas is here and at the conference and can explain this much better than I can. Stage 3-4 shows up as a separate cluster that gives support to its existence as a separate stage, because it was derived from very different ways of analyzing the data. I was surprised, however, that the scattergram also turned up as an arc rather than a linear progression. Next slide. The transition from conventional to post-conventional meaning making in EDT. First, the shift from 4 to 4-5, or orange to green, seems just as significant in individual development as the move from 4-5 to 5, green to teal, which Wilber and Esty see as the major watershed in development based on the idea of harmonics between the first tier and second tier stages. Second, the shift from conventional to post-conventional is profound. The fourth person perspective allows individuals to look back at their own social and cultural programming for the first time. That is, to stand outside and see their own socialization into a particular social belief system. At the self-questioning stage 4-5, people have recognized the relativity of their own and others' vantage points and begin to explore their identities beyond the roles offered by society. Third, a person with a fourth-person perspective becomes sensitive to the unique stories conditioning, and experience of other individuals and groups. This opens the door for appreciating more diversity and have more tolerance for all the differences. Finally, stage 4-5 is the last stage in the sequence of ego stages, who believe that if only everyone could see the world through my eyes, the world would be a better place. In EDT, the move from 4-5 to 5 is also a major transition. People at stage 5 are the first group who understands its own and others' journey of becoming. In the first post-conventional stage that fully knows that humans go through stages of unfoldment. And that is so across cultures. The depictions of how that unfoldment happens is what changes and what is considered what matters. Oh, I'm doing well here with time. Number 17. The ego's trap for storytelling. Self-identity stories and theories range from individual narratives to grand series of adult development, from integral theory to the Big Bang and any other theory. Edward O. Wilson saw through the grand narratives issue. He once equipped that science is the greatest myth of them all. So he had construct awareness. Ego always wants to make us feel immortal, significant, and in control, and explain everything under the sun. The irony is that striving for more development, greater insight, deeper self-awareness, and the better maps of reality keeps us in ego's grip. The more we toil to detach from ego and gain ego transcendence, the more attached we are to whatever we are seeking. Spiritual bypassing is a term for this human tendency. Trungpa Rinpoche famously diagnosed this ego trap as spiritual materialism. And again, I would say, even if we attempt this growth and yearn for ego transcendence, the effort itself may indeed give us eventually some sense of what these other ways of being are like. But they will not get us there. That is really the gist of this understanding. And finally, the slide 18, what we understand as mature ego integration. Mature ego integration as a human being entails an increasing capacity to notice ego's workings and to see in perspective its tireless labors. It is to realize how deeply we can fool ourselves about what we know, what we can know, and what remains a mystery. It is to realize the constructed nature of our self-identities and worldviews. In the best case, people at the very later ego stages begin to lighten up and experience the simple fact of being alive as a miracle. We can delight in the world of the senses and the kaleidoscope of our inner world, moment to moment, as well as resonate with the struggles, joys, and sorrows of all other sentient beings and the non-human world of which we are an inseparable part. And the final slide here. What is the human condition? And I'm just reading what I try to express for myself in particular, since I don't have any beliefs in any gods or, anything beyond this life. Being alive is a many splendid thing, a unique experience, and a profound mystery. No theory, no matter how complex and comprehensive, can ever do justice to the simple blessing of existing as a sentient being. Thank you for letting me share my perspective on ego development and offer some observations regarding the grand theories of integral and spiral dynamics. If we are to develop ourselves to be the most mature people we can be, we need to become self-aware about our preferences, shadows, and biases, and our own meaning-making efforts. Only then can we model what mature leadership entails and inspire those who wish to lead and support in their growth. And the final slide. Thank you all for listening and bringing wholeness into an integral future by attending this event. Thank you, thank you. 45 minutes was a very brief time slot to cover so much complex material. If you have questions, concerns, or comments, the organizer gave us 2.5 hours tomorrow afternoon to address them in conversation. I hope you will come and explore further the many topics I have touched upon, from colors to the possibility of stage 3-4 to leadership maturity AI. There is much to explore and to learn. Thank you all for who have helped make this presentation over distance possible. There have been many, and for helping me get this over because I was very anxious. I'm too old to deal with these kinds of things. But this is my last presentation, okay? Wonderful, thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Oh my God.